Welcome to UO Today. I'm Barbara Altman, Director of the Oregon Humanities Center. Our guest today is Richard Herskowitz, Instructor of Film Studies and Arts Administration at the U of O. He is also the curator of the new Cinema and Media Arts Festival launched by the Houston Cinema Arts Society this year. A nationally renowned film programmer, Herskowitz was director of the Virginia Film Festival from 1994 through 2008. Hosted by the University of Virginia, the Virginia Film Festival is characterized by an unusual mix of education and entertainment. Prior to his work at the University of Virginia, Herskowitz directed the Cornell Cinema, one of the country's best-known media arts centers, for 12 years. Herskowitz has taught film and art courses at 6 universities and colleges. He has written many articles and essays on media topics for academic and general publications, and has delivered talks at the Museum of Modern Art and the New York Video Festival at Lincoln Center. Since coming to the U of O, Herskowitz has been developing new film exhibition programs and is hoping to develop an annual film festival here in Eugene. Richard, welcome to UO Today.
Thank you, Barbara.
We're really glad that you're here, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Oh, thanks.
Now, I know that your work in Virginia was a huge success. So what managed to lure you all the way across the country to the University of Oregon?
Well, you know, I've always worked on the boundary between the universities and the public. 12 years at Cornell University, 15 years at the University of Virginia, and I had built up Cornell Cinema as a major media arts center and the Virginia Film Festival the last 15 years. And I saw a lot of opportunity here. One of the main things that drew me here is that my wife, Jill Hartz, is the new director of the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art, and she had been the director of the University of Virginia Art Museum. So it was the opportunity to join her here and the enthusiasm of the University of Oregon administration for developing film programs in conjunction with their emerging cinema studies program that made me realize this could be a good fit.
It seems like a great fit to us, those of us who are welcoming you here. And I just, I can't wait for your vibrancy and your expertise in this area to help us bring together all the strands of interest in film in Eugene. Yeah. Do you see potential here?
I see so much. I mean, I've been meeting with so many different people. I mean, one of the things that's so exciting about this new cinema studies program is that it's going to bring together faculty in 3 different schools, in journalism as well as architecture and allied arts and the College of Arts and Sciences. Film is taught across so many different disciplines, and frequently, scholars, faculty, and disciplines often don't cross those boundaries, but this is going to be an interdisciplinary program. So the idea is that if the festivals that I'm working on and the year-round programs that I'm working on, as they emerge, they will involve these scholars in discussing the films with the audience. The programs will be made available to the university community and the larger public. That's what worked at Cornell, what worked at the University of Virginia. It broke down some of the boundaries between the departments and also between the university and the community.
We do a lot of that bridge building through the Humanities Center between the university and the community. That's one of the things that really excites me about your new initiatives here. I wanted to go back to the Virginia Film Festival just a little bit because it was such a big success under your direction. It was described by one person as, quote, the academically cool one, where filmmakers get taken seriously for their intellect, unquote, which I loved. How did that festival evolve under your direction?
Well, you know, I can't take as much credit as I think you're giving me. Maybe, basically, the concept was there. I was at Cornell University when the festival was created in 1988. I was running Cornell Cinema, which was a film society. I showed 500 films a year. The film society era, and maybe we'll get a chance to talk about this a little bit, was shifting. The energy was moving from year-round film societies to film festivals. This new film festival emerged at the University of Virginia and called the Virginia Film Festival, serving the whole state. And it had this concept that each year there would be a theme. And the theme would change every year. And the whole program was designed as a 4-day course on that theme in which the world was invited to enroll. So the university was opening up to the public. The films that were selected, and let me just give you some of the examples. Sometimes the themes were genres like film noir or music in the movies. Maybe the way I changed it is that the themes became more conceptual under me. One year the theme was cool. We dealt with jazz and film, and we dealt with the Beat Generation, and also just the whole idea of coolness as it's evolved. Wet was another theme. We dealt with water imagery in film, but we also dealt with political issues around water and scarcity in films. I mean, the themes were often springboards. Aliens, for example, was I think that was my last theme, and that theme dealt with both sci-fi aliens. In fact, we did some screenings at the McCormick Observatory at the University of Virginia, but also the whole issue of illegal aliens. And what did it mean to actually apply this term aliens to undocumented workers? One of the things about these conceptual and often political themes is that we were really trying to engage the public sphere and public discourse. The year before, for example, Virginia had voted a marriage amendment that defined who is and isn't a family, and it was a very aggressive blockage of not just gay marriages but civil unions. So that next year our theme was kinflicks, on basically what defines a family exactly. And we used the films as the springboard for these discussions. The scholars and the critics and the filmmakers that we involved in these discussions, they weren't just film people. I mean, we would bring in anthropologists and psychologists and sociologists and historians. And again, the idea was that film should be a space for public debate and discussion. It shouldn't be ushered in and out of the theater, have your popcorn and go. There's a hunger, I think, for this kind of discussion, not just in the audience, but the filmmakers themselves. They're the ones, the people from Los Angeles, from Hollywood, from the independent world, knew that by coming to this festival, there was a quality, there was a level of discussion they wouldn't get anyplace else.
Were you drawing on the faculty from the University of Virginia for your anthropologists and political scientists
Mostly,
and so on?
but not completely. We had major scholars from all over the world, major film scholars and international. For example, the year we had cool as a theme, we brought Robert Farris Thompson, the Africanist scholar, because he had really developed a theory of coolness and how it's rooted in the history of African art. And, I mean, really almost anybody, I mean, some of these scholars were just so excited to get an invitation from a film festival that frequently we just paid their plane fare, and sometimes not even that. But anyway, it got the variety of participants was what excited the filmmakers. The LA people who came, the studio people. I was amazed to discover that these Hollywood people had this thirst for intellectual discussion, and with audiences and with smart appreciators of film. They'd say to me this was recharging their batteries. They had to come back year after year.
What kind of venues did you use in town, in Charlottesville?
Well, we used anything we could get a hold of. One of the things that, actually maybe this was another one of my contributions, is that, there is a kind of a showman in me, and the year that the theme was wet, we showed, one of the venues we used was the university swimming pool. We actually had an audience in inner tubes in the water watching. We showed Jaws in the pool. The thing about it was that there was all this intellectual discussion, but this was a festival. It was going to be playful and fun. And like I mentioned before, when the theme was aliens, we actually used the observatory, and we showed films there. So, but generally, the main theaters we used were movie theaters that ranged from the local art theater, Vinegar Hill, to the Paramount Theater with 1,000 seats, which was this big, glorious old vaudeville theater. But we also used classrooms. We used also, it was a multi-arts festival. And Jill Hartz, my wife who directs the Schnitzer, her museum at the University of Virginia frequently would have art installations and exhibits. Local galleries would as well. Also concert halls. We would have a lot of live music and film events. Again, there were we were everywhere. This was probably one of the this was one of the two biggest festivals of the year in Charlottesville.
In an interview with you, I saw it said that people said they saw you everywhere at every event, but you made the comment that you never actually had time to watch one film from beginning to end, right?
No, no, I may have once or twice, but no, when the festival began, I would be introducing things everywhere and dealing with the situation. I mean, actually, that's when my batteries are really charged, and that's when I'm really thriving in the midst of this, and it's hard for me to sit still.
The impact of it, I think, one measure of the impact of the festival was your award in 2007. You were named Tourism Person of the Year in Charlottesville. And incidentally, before that, in 1988, you had been given a Human Rights Award by the Tompkins County Human Rights Commission for the work you were doing in Ithaca.
Yeah.
So I think those two are really excellent kind of signs that you were having a major influence on the community well outside the campus.
Yeah, that was, you know, I was always engaging as many participants as possible in the programs. This was the way to generate an audience, for one thing, but you know, whether it was community organizations, churches, religious groups, schools, you know, retirement homes. I mean, you know, the festival really reached out, and at Cornell, for example, the Human Rights Awards, again, as much as possible, my programs always involved discussions after them, and having representatives of various organizations, and Ithaca and Charlottesville both had many different human rights organizations, political organizations, groups advocating various things. Anyway, they would make suggestions to me, and then they would participate in the programs and the discussions, and it helped build up the audiences, and it made for an experience for the viewers. They weren't just seeing a film, they were really getting a chance to engage afterwards.
I know you've been interested in film studies for a very long time. One of your two undergraduate majors was cinema studies. And there was a great quotation I read in an article that said that you realized at some point that you would do more for the world promoting other people's films than making films yourself. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I still, you know, I just was so inspired by certain filmmakers, and it would frustrate me that their work was not being seen in the United States. They were not being recognized. And gradually I realized, you know, I could do more good helping these people get seen and recognized and discussed through becoming a programmer or an exhibitor than I could by making films myself, and I switched into that realm.
You know, I don't quite understand how you can program more than 500 films a year as you did when you were working with Cornell Cinema. How does that work?
Well, again, it has to do with what I was describing about really discovering at a certain point that my role as a programmer was more to be a gatekeeper than to be somebody who selects every single film myself. I do give the overall programs a shape. So, but for example, what I did at Cornell University is every semester I would put out a call for co-sponsorship proposals to faculty and student organizations and community and campus organizations, and we would flooded with ideas. This conference was going to happen, or this professor was going to teach a course on a topic, and would we show a film in conjunction with that? Or this professor was going to the Czech Republic and was going to be meeting with a filmmaker. It turned out it was going to be a major filmmaker I was very excited about, and would we be interested in having him bring that filmmaker back here? You know, just by opening ourselves up to the involvement of all these collaborators who would propose program ideas that I would then sift through with my board and shape into a program, I could have done 1,000 films a year. It was really winnowing them down and shaping them that was the difficulty.
So you gave the overall vision, and then you gave people free rein, and they put together what they wanted as well.
Yeah, well, I gave them, actually, you know, we could help come up with the funds. We had the facility, we had the theater, we had the expertise to publicize, but we were counting on them to lead the discussion, to help write materials, to help publicize this, get their classes or their organizations to come to the theater. You know, I have to say, Barbara, that maybe part of this was something that evolved over the 25 years I've been programming. When I began, it was the height of the Film Society era, and people just came to see films from all over the world and to see new films, all kinds. There was a general curiosity about world cinema. Students felt it was part of their rite of passage of being a college student. That changed in the early to mid 80s, and I used to say that my programming went more from broadcasting to narrowcasting. Frequently, the films that we selected were targeted to particular niche audiences. I think I'll give you an example of when I noticed that the most. We showed 2 Chinese films back to back 2 nights, and the house was packed, almost 400 people each night. And I said to this person who had advised us to show it, well, how fascinating. We had 2 nights of so many Chinese people in the community. He says, yes, but if you noticed, one audience was all Taiwanese, and the other audience was mostly, you know, Hong Kong. I mean, that is, even the specialization of the interests of the audience was that fine. That would frustrate me in a way. I want audiences to cross over, and I do everything I can to get people to explore other cultures or interests or ethnicities or political topics than their own. But the fact is that becomes the core to getting an audience, people with a kind of pre-existing interest that you market to.
So what caused that shift away from film societies, in your opinion?
Oh, there's so many speculations. I mean, you know, it was maybe the emergence of video. One of the things that I believe is that the increase in publicity and advertising hype for commercial movies in the late 80s, in the early 80s. I mean, what happened is, you know, because of this emphasis after Jaws, I think it was, to get so many people to come to the opening weekend of film, a new Hollywood release gets this absolutely deafening publicity. And I think film festivals, in a way I see it as a kind of a circling the wagons. What happens is, instead of having your films run all year long, you consolidate a lot of programs, almost a year's worth of programs, into a week. And by having all these things happening in this consolidated period, you get the kind of attention that can compete with a single Hollywood release. That's one of my theories. There's other reasons many people have speculated on, but the fact is that it's no longer really part of my students' college experience to see, as it was when I was a college student, to see the new Kurosawa, Bergman, Fellini, Antonioni, etc.
They're not going to see the new Spielberg, the new Clint Eastwood.
That's a great thing to point out that you're doing. What I've noticed is that I do have very savvy students who are extremely conscious. They're extremely excited this week about Star Trek coming, and they are into new releases, and they even like some of the most talented creative. They may like Martin Scorsese, but they don't have a deep knowledge of world cinema. And one thing that I point out to them is that the innovations in filmmaking, if you look at Scorsese himself or Quentin Tarantino, what energized their creativity and their making was that Scorsese was influenced by Italian cinema, classic Hollywood cinema, B-movies, Tarantino, his exposure to Hong Kong cinema and taking some of those elements and bringing them to Hollywood. He named his company after Godard's movie, Band of Outsiders. And again, I tell them, it's when you expose yourself to movies of the past and movies of other cultures that you get new ideas about how to see your own culture differently and how to bring innovations to American filmmaking. And so that's what I think I do in my teaching, and I try to do in my programming.
Is it just my impression, or are the number of film festivals, is the number burgeoning?
Yes, whether it's going to continue to burgeon at the rate they've been burgeoning is, there is a question. I'm, working on, the one that I'm doing in Houston is a media arts festival. It's a new kind of festival that's more about media outside the theater. There's a lot of live performance with media as well as installations. The one that I am working on here is going to focus on films of the Pacific Rim countries. You know, the University of Oregon is part of the Association of Pacific Rim Universities. And there's a lot of excitement, especially in Asian cinema lately, that I think we're going to be able to tap into. The other thing about the festival that I'm working on here is that it's going to be partly live and partly online. So I guess what I'm saying is that the two festivals I'm most deeply involved with right now at the moment are new kinds of festivals that are responding to the changes in media so that the festivals are under pressure now to really come up with new models, and I find that really exciting, and I'm trying to take part in that.
So by building in a large component for alternative media, you may also be recuperating some of the generation of our students who aren't such regular cinema goers anymore?
Exactly. I mean, you know, I don't want to be this force for, you know, you've got to just look at the films of the past, although that is a big thing of what I try to do to get their gaze to be as expansive as possible. But I'm also learning myself about how the art of cinema is evolving and digital media is transforming. There's a lot of really exciting new work happening digitally, things being made for web phones, cinema that can be, again, carried off the screen interactively. I'm trying to, you know, festival programmers need to be as receptive as possible to new art forms.
Apart from the festivals that you yourself are in charge of, do you have favorites? I've seen you mention the Toronto Film Festival, for example.
Yes, that happens to be my favorite.
Yeah.
In fact, Jill and I, my first time going there, was our honeymoon. Was there during the Toronto Film Festival, and that was 1984, and I've been back almost every year since. I love the good programming. And the best thing about Toronto is the smart audiences. You know, the conversations that you overhear people online as are so fascinating that you almost, you know, just constantly want to listen in on what people have to say about the movie.
Do you mean as you're waiting
to get into the movie?
Yes,
you hear what people have to say about the films they just saw. I mean, I've learned so much just by overhearing the conversations. It's again, that's something that, as you can tell, I really believe in, the participation of audiences, and there's a lot of that in Toronto.
I lived in Toronto for many years, and I remember the festival taking over all of downtown. It really became the main event for a week or more.
Yeah. Oh, just people adore it.
In your earlier remarks, Richard, you mentioned that U of O recently launched a cinema studies major. How do you anticipate that the proposed film festival will supplement that academic program? Well,
what I'm going to try to do is involve the film faculty in the conducting the discussions. That we're going to try to cater some of the programs to classes so that there will actually be classes that are taught. Some of them are going to be short courses, some full-length semester classes. Some of them will be open to people outside the university as well, but that connect, that take advantage of the people we're bringing to the film festival so that they can engage with the education that's going on. There's something else that we're going to do that I did at the University of Virginia. It was one of the most successful programs that we created. It was called the Adrenaline Film Project, and it was an intensive 3-day film production where on the first day the participants would write their film, on the second day shoot it, on the third day edit it, and the last day of the film festival screen it to the public. And the whole process was mentored by professional filmmakers, so it was an intensive film production workshop for the students. I'm going to bring that here, and already people in theater arts are very excited about it. Their student actors will be getting involved, so there's going to be that component too.
Oh, good, and I imagine the School of Journalism and Communication will be involved in that one as well,
yes,
right?
I'm talking to them as well because of the production component. We're going to, but again, it's so exciting that these well, new digital technology has made it possible to make high-quality films in such a short period, and the tools are so accessible and available.
So how long a film could a student hope to make in that kind of a 4-day process?
Well, we limited it to, I think, 3 to 5 minutes. I think we set that as the range. We had a lot of, ultimately we had 12 or 13 films, and they showed on a single program, and that's about as much as people could take, so that was the...
Right.
Yeah.
Just as we begin to wind down here, I wonder if you could tell me briefly what kind of courses you've been teaching since you arrived in the winter.
You know, I taught, I've been in the English department, I taught experimental film. Experimental film is my biggest passion personally. I love all kinds of film, Hollywood, documentary, but personally, experimental film, that is, films made by individual artists, films made more in the tradition of painting and visual art and poetry, forms of self-expression, often non-narrative. That's my my greatest passion. You know, and that's what I taught in the fall. In the spring, I've been teaching neo-neorealisms. So that is, I've been teaching contemporary independent feature films that spring out of the influence of Italian neorealism and films like The Bicycle Thief in the late 40s. I go through John Cassavetes' independent films in the US, through the recent film Wendy and Lucy, but I also show the Iranian films of Kiarostami, the Dogma 95 films of Denmark, and I show how neorealism was the big inspiration that continues to stimulate exciting independent feature filmmaking.
And how are your students reacting to all that?
You know, I think they're blown away by these movies. I mean, they saw Mike Leigh's Naked last week, and I think they were amazed by it. This week I showed them Iranian films, and again, for just seeing Iran, you can't imagine the amount of subversive dissent that goes on within Iranian society unless you see Iranian movies and you see how they're pushing against the limits of their society. And again, that's one of the things that's so important about showing international films, to let people see what's going on that goes beyond our stereotypes, our expectations about what's going on in other societies. And Iranian cinema is one of those revelatory foreign film experiences for students.
One last very quick question. Do you have a favorite movie?
I do. It's, well, it's close. The two are Andy Warhol's Chelsea Girls, which was a double-screen film that is endlessly rich and stimulating to me. The other one is Peter Watkins' art film, Edvard Munch.
All right. This will encourage people to go watch those. Richard, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you, Barbara.
We have been speaking with Richard Herskowitz. He teaches film studies and develops film curriculum and programming in the UO Departments of Arts and Administration, Comparative Literature, and English. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.